going to go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody for coming. We obviously over-prepared, but that's fine. I don't mind having extra copies for everybody, and then we will leave the extras that are out there at Town Hall, so you can let people know if they have questions or comments after the fact. They can just stop by and leave them there. So thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Mary Frattini, and I am a member of the Rochester Planning and Zoning Board. I'm going to be starting with just a brief overview of sort of how tonight's going to run, what the point of tonight is as far as your planning board is concerned. I'm going to do a 1,000-foot view of the permitting process for cell phone towers in the state of Vermont. Then I'm going to turn it over to Francis Parisi, who's here from Vertex Towers, who is going to give a presentation on some of the facts about this possible project. And there's a reason I'm calling it a possible project, which is to say the application has not yet been submitted to the Public Utilities Commission. So that's the reason that is the very specific language that I'll be using tonight. When Francis is done, we're going to open it up the floor to questions. Dan McKinley, everybody's favorite moderator, is going to be running that. And we planned about 40 minutes or more for that, and since we're a small group tonight, I'm hoping we can get through your questions, and time permitting, we'll open up the floor to comments as well. So, this is a public information I wrote meeting. Let me emphasize that this is not a formal meeting. This is a public information session about the 248 permitting process for cell phone towers and the possible cell tower project at 1030 Route 100 South in Rochester. There are no decisions being made here tonight, and this meeting is specifically designed to do three things, right? It's so that we, your planning board, can give you some basic information about how cell phone towers are permitted. It's so that we can get some basic information about the possible project from Vertex Towers, and to give you a chance to ask those questions, either about the information we're presenting here tonight, information that is not presented that you would like us to get for and to you, or anything else after we've covered that you think would be relevant. So. This is not the only chance you will have to learn about or talk about cell phone tower permitting in the town of Rochester. This is not the only chance. There will be many. We are very committed as your planning board to hearing from as many people as possible in as many forums as possible at the moments when your contributions are most useful and effective for you. So I just want to keep emphasizing that. We will have a couple of people available via Zoom for some technical questions if they come up. We have two people from Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Planning Commission. We also have an engineer from Vertex if your questions end up being a little bit more technical. So some of my logistics, since we are smaller, I can skip ahead to. I do want you to know that we are trying to centralize the information so that you can go to one point and all of the documents will be there. We haven't got that set up quite yet, but we have set up a separate email account for questions and comments about it. That's what's on your postcard, which is rochestervtplanningcommission@gmail.com. And that, again, is so that nothing kind of slips through the cracks, right? If you email or contact one of the planning board members individually, we talk a lot, but this way we make sure that everybody's getting the same information. So. 1,000-foot view. Yep, this is what I said. Oops, my slideshow's not there. There we go. Oh no. There we go. Okay. This is basically just what I said, equal parts. The information I'm giving to you is coming from a public guide that was published by the Vermont Public Service Department. This will be available to you. I am not a lawyer. I am not a planner. I am a member of the board, and I am summarizing this public information to you as best we can. The town of Rochester does not permit, grant, deny cell phone towers. That is a power that is reserved to the state, okay? The town of Rochester does not grant or deny them. There are specific ways and moments that we can participate in this process. But the decision for permitting towers is made by the Public Utilities Commission. The PUC will grant or deny something called a certificate for public good. The Vermont Public Service Department will represent the public interest in such proceedings. And again, I'm going to come back to this because there is a role for the town, but it can be most effective if we're clear about where we can speak, who we can speak to, and what it is that they wish to hear from us at any particular point in time. There's two phases to a permit. There's the step one, right, which is submitting the application. An applicant has to submit, it's called a 45-day notice of intent to apply. They have to submit that notice to the Public Utilities Commission, the Department of Public Service, the host town, and the adjoining landowners. After 45 days or more after that, they submit an application to the Public Utilities Commission, and the PUC has to declare the application complete. All right, this is the first step. So far, we have received a 45-day notice of an intent to apply from Vertex Towers for a possible project at 1030 Route 100 South. We received it on June 12th. That is the only thing that has happened so far, okay? The application has not been submitted, and therefore the Public Utilities Commission, hasn't declared it complete because it doesn't exist yet. After the Public Utilities Commission declares an application is complete, we enter the 30-day comment period. There's 30 days for parties, interveners, and individuals to submit comments to the Public Utilities Commission. The host town is automatically granted the right to submit these comments. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. After the application has been declared complete, the Public Utilities Commission has 60 to 180 days to issue a ruling. The reason I say 60 to 180 days is because it depends on whether or not the Public Utilities Commission sees any significant issues with specific criteria. If they do not, they have to issue a ruling within 60 days. If they do, they can take up to 180 days to issue a ruling, okay? There are 3 ways for towns to participate in the 248A process. They can have a public meeting where we can request a public meeting with the applicant and the Public Service Department. This is actually the second time that we've asked somebody from Vertex to come and present. We did invite somebody from the Public Utilities Commission tonight, and they said that they were not going to comment until the application had been filed. So that could very well happen again. Submitting comments, this is what happens during the 30-day comment period after the application has been declared complete. We file them in writing. The Public Utilities Commission has to give a detailed response to every recommendation that we submit, also in writing. And then we can also participate as a formal party if the Public Utilities Commission ends up having evidentiary hearings and things like that. The host town is already given the right to intervene as the host town, okay? So again, public meeting is the only thing that happens after the 45-day notice. The comments and the intervention require the application to have been declared complete. Some things that the Public Utilities Commission considers, and this is not an exhaustive list, will the project have what's called undue adverse effects on specific criteria? And I'll list those criteria in a minute. How will the project affect the land conservation measures in the plans of the affected municipalities? What are the recommendations that the town legislative bodies or town or regional planning commissions submits in writing to the PUC? How does the project service the public good or the state's interest as it's specifically articulated in a specific statute? And I'm not going to go into the statute tonight, but number 4 becomes very important in terms of thinking about how the state does or does not defer to town plans, right? This question of what is the public good and what is the state's interest is something that the Public Utilities Commission has to consider. Undue adverse effects. I'm not going into this in great detail. These are the categories that the Public Utilities Commission is looking at. If a project causes undue adverse effects to one of these categories, they can deny the permit, okay? We have more information about this. I can give you more information about this, but in general, this is something that the PUC itself is looking at. Aesthetics, historical sites, air and water purity, the natural environment, public health and safety, and the public use and enjoyment of the 89 and 91 scenic corridors and other highways designated as scenic roads. You're probably going to get sick of hearing me say these words, substantial deference and good cause, but I'm going to say them over and over again. So town plans and town planners fit into this process in a very specific way. The Public Utilities Commission must give what they call substantial deference to the land conservation measures in the plans of the affected municipalities and the recommendations of the municipal and regional plans, unless they find there is good cause to find otherwise, okay? So substantial deference, land conservation, plans, recommendations, good cause, these things all matter. So what does it mean? Substantial deference means they have to give significant and meaningful weight to the following things: to the land conservation measures in the plans of affected municipalities. This is our town plan, which I believe was most recently updated in 2020 and is available on the town website. They have to give substantial deference to the recommendations of municipal and regional planning commissions regarding the impact and the relationship between a possible project and our town plans, okay? So they have to give significant and meaningful weight to town plans and what towns think the possible project, how it fits into their town plans. But substantial deference is not, it's a category, right? Unless there is good cause for them to find otherwise. And here's what it means to find otherwise, right? If deferring to the land conservation measures in the plans of affected municipalities and the recommendations of the planning commissions would be detrimental to the public good or the state's interest as articulated in this specific statute, okay? So they have to substantially defer to town plans, to recommendations by the town planning commissions, but they have to also weigh this question of the public good and the state's interest as it's defined in this statute. There's a reason I call this the 1,000-foot view, right? That is very much the 1,000-foot view. But I find it important to understand how our process works in order to figure out where I fit into the process, how I can make my voice heard effectively. And insofar as we or your planning board are doing that, we want to do that for you as well. So to sort of sum up my summary, and this document will also be available, the state grants or denies permits to cell phone towers through the Section 248A process. Rochester will not grant or deny the permit. There are specific steps in applying for a certificate of public good. The only step that has been taken so far was the 45-day notice of the intent to apply. The application itself has not been filed or declared complete, so the rest of that process, which can take up to 180 days, hasn't started yet. There are specific ways for the town to participate. They happen at specific points in the process, and they cover specific information from the town to the state regarding our town and regional plans. And the Public Utilities Commission considers many elements, but they are specific criteria, land conservation measures in town plans, recommendations by town and regional planners, and this question about the public good and the state's interest, okay? That's my 1,000-foot view. We do have somebody from Two Rivers who will be here to answer questions if you have more specific things at the end of the meeting. So thanks very much for your time and patience with my little PowerPoint. And I'm going to hand it over to Francis, who is going to present some basically substantial information about the possible project. Provided I can get this to work the way I want it to.
I gotta give you this.
Mary, are we going to hold questions until after?
I hadn't, yes. Well, let me rephrase. Yes, that was my plan. But I,
Watch your feet, Mary.
I'm going to show the slideshow. Thanks, Francis.
Good evening. My name is Francis Parisi. I'm a representative of Vertex Towers. I was actually here in front of the Planning Commission back in early September and gave a similar presentation, so that for those of you that were here, a lot of this is duplicative, but I think there's some new people in the audience and definitely some questions with respect to the type of facility that we're proposing. Actually, I thought Mary did a great job of defining kind of the overview of the permitting process, and I'll kind of defer to Mary on that, but I thought she did a very good job of explaining it. By way of introduction, Vertex Towers is what we call a wireless infrastructure developer. The names that you've heard of in the cell phone arena, Verizon and AT&T and T-Mobile, have pretty much gotten out of the real estate business. They're focused on developing their telecommunications networks, and they partner up with folks like Vertex to build wireless infrastructure. We're actually based in Massachusetts. We've done probably 30 towers throughout Massachusetts and New Hampshire and Vermont, in areas as equally scenic and rural as Rochester. And what we found is that if we can be more thoughtful about where we place these type of facilities, because we're not Verizon or not AT&T, we can look more closely at your land use, your zoning regulations, the PUC process, and come up with very thoughtful solutions. It's been very well received. In addition, it's a way of bringing telecommunications to rural areas like Rochester, because as you can imagine, somebody like Verizon is trying to provide coverage to the entire United States, including Rochester, Vermont, and Montpelier, Vermont, and Boston, Massachusetts, and Oklahoma, and California. And it's just a real challenge for them to get everywhere all at once and satisfy everyone's individual concerns. So they partner with folks like Vertex to do like the infrastructure and the due diligence. In this particular case, we've already got a commitment from Verizon Wireless. They are very actively building out their network in Vermont. They have pretty good coverage along the I-90-89 corridor, but now they're focused on the Route 100 corridor. There was recently a tower built in Stockbridge, which Verizon has just installed their antennas but haven't turned them on yet. There's a tower in Granville that was built a couple years ago that Verizon is on that as well. There's towers along the Bethel and the Randolph and the 89 corridor on the other side of the hill between here and 89. But they're very actively trying to build out their network along the Route 100 corridor and have partnered up with Vertex to find a solution in Rochester. I hope I don't need to sell cell phone coverage in general. The need is there. You know, the statistics are staggering. Over 50% of America has cut the cord and is only using wireless phones as their only source of communications. 80% of 911 calls are made by cell phones. And, you know, there's clearly, if anyone's a Verizon customer, you can certainly attest to the fact that there's a gap in coverage here with telecommunications. We do a lot of work with regional planning commissions throughout all of New England, including New Hampshire. And New Hampshire has deemed the lack of cell phone coverage a public safety hazard. So with respect to the certificate of public good, you know, it's actually really easy for us to show that there is a public good because we're bringing better telecommunications, a better public safety network, a better telecommunications. What's happened too is that we actually thought that this was going to be, when I've been doing this for about 20 or 25 years, when I first started, I thought it was a mobile technology where we were going to provide coverage up Route 89 and you know, maybe some of the tertiary roads. But what's happening is it's evolving into a residential technology, and people are using it in their homes as their primary source of telecommunications. And over the last several years with the pandemic, people are trying to work from home and educate from home. And so better telecommunications networks are just a necessity at this point. Verizon has spent an immense amount of time exploring different options, looking at different solutions to this. And as you can imagine, the Route 100 corridor is an incredibly challenging area given the topography. You know, Route 100 and the town of Rochester is in a valley surrounded by very tall peaks. And those peaks become structural impediments to telecommunications signal. So even though there's very good coverage on the other side in the Bethel and the Route 89 corridor, there's a significant gap in coverage along the Route 100 corridor. And we will provide all of this to the town as part of the PUC application process. But this basically shows all the different sites that Verizon already enjoys. You know, along Royalton, there's a tower in Bethel right as you get off the highway, just pretty close to downtown. And then several other sites going up into Randolph and along the 89 corridor. But they actually have no sites on the air south of what I would call North Granville and up towards the Sugar Bush ski area. So there's really no coverage along now. They've gotten one tower that they just put the antennas on but haven't turned them on yet down at the Stockbridge Pittsfield line that'll provide some coverage coming up Route 100 from Stockbridge into Rochester. But we're trying to find a solution for that, very long stretch of Rochester from the Stockbridge line all the way going up into Hancock. And we can look at this unfortunately, it gets very technical. Verizon broadcasts at multiple different frequency bands. As we get more and more users of cell phone technology, they deploy multiple frequencies. This was shown at the lower frequency bands, so some of the historic low band frequencies. And as you go up into the higher bands, 850 megahertz, the 1900 megahertz, what they call PCS, what happens is that you use higher frequencies, the coverage gets less and less. So you want to try to get it as close to the residential and commercial and industrial users as possible without getting too impactful for them, to take advantage of the higher frequency bands and the higher data speeds that come with that. On behalf of Vertex and in partnership with Verizon, we've been looking for solutions here. And in more urban areas, you have tall structures, water tanks, church steeples. I know there's a church steeple in town that AT&T has antennas in, but as you can imagine, I just looked at it, it's about a 30-foot tall church steeple. It wasn't designed for telecommunications. It wasn't designed to get over the hills going just a quarter mile south, just past where we are right now, or even a quarter mile north. So AT&T enjoys a little bit of coverage along the what I would call the downtown Rochester area. But church steeples weren't designed with telecommunications in mind. They weren't designed for the type of antennas that multiple telecommunication companies enjoy or deploy for their network. So although AT&T has a little bit of coverage downtown, Verizon has no coverage, T-Mobile has no coverage, and that's what we're trying to find a solution to resolve. The zoning map here actually allows us to go anywhere in town. There's some restrictions with respect to going too close to the river and the resource areas down close to the river. But for the most part, we're in a residential agricultural zone, which is a permitted zone under the zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw, even though it's not applicable here, because as Mary explained, we follow the state PUC guidelines with respect to these things, but the state actually looks to the town to say, what does your zoning allow or not allow? And this type of facility is allowed in all districts other than the flood overlay district and the aquifer recharge district, which are down closer to the river. And the only requirement is that we meet what they call 150% of tower height setback from all abutting property lines. So we look at it, it's compliant in all respects with your zoning bylaw, even though, and the PUC will look at that as part of the application process. The proposed facility is 1030 Route 10. It's a very large, I think it's 244 acres, with a little bit of frontage on Route 100, but a substantial back lot going way back up. For those of you that don't know, it's on as you're heading north on Route 100, it's on your right. It's kind of, if you look for a landmark, I believe this is called the garage road. And so it's kind of straight opposite there, right down where, I forget, there's a little store right here, I forget the name of it. But as you can see, it's kind of straight on there from the garage road, looking up the hill. And it's amply set back from all abutting properties. We have to be 150%, and we're substantially more than that from all abutting properties and public rights of way. We're about 2,000 feet off of Route 100, and I think the closest property line is over 300 feet away, so substantially more than the setback required by the zoning bylaw. One of the things, we were here back in September, and a lot of people expressed questions and concerns, and in anticipation of that, I went back to the engineers and asked them, can we tweak this at all? Can we be more thoughtful? Can we be more responsible to some of the town folks' concerns? And two of the things that we came up with to reduce to that, we'd originally proposed, and the notice that we provided the town said that we were going to build a tower that was 170 feet tall. And given some concerns by the people, given the fact that AT&T already has a little bit of coverage in town, and even though we're trying to build a telecommunications facility that accommodates multiple telecommunications providers, including Verizon, we've reduced the tower height to 140 feet. And so I think that's relevant because when we start looking at some of the photos and the visibility, you'll see that that is a substantial concession from a visibility perspective to diminish the visibility from the Route 100 corridor and from like where we are right now and closer to downtown Rochester where the common is and the library, but also reducing the impact on nearby residences. In addition, we did a standalone. This type of facility will utilize a very long existing logging road that's already there. I have pictures if you want to see it. We're doing a very short extension, in our mind short, about 500 feet from the end of the existing logging road. And we were able to design that extension and the compound in such a way so that it reduces the amount of permanent disturbance, which is a technical term that the PUC uses to define the applicability and the scope of this project, and also eliminate the amount of impervious surface. These facilities, once built, are very de minimis in nature. Even though it's a 244-acre parcel, we're only using about 3,000 square feet of that for the compound, a 50 by 50, a little bit of construction and some runoff prevention. But from a site disturbance perspective, it's quite de minimis. And one of the reasons why we did that is because Mary didn't, in her 1,000-foot overview, there's really two processes that the PUC looks at. If you have a taller tower and a more substantial development, they give a full review, but they give a more limited review to sites that are what they call limited size and scope. And by redefining the height of the tower and by redefining the access and the amount of temporary disturbance that we're doing, we will meet the limitations of that limited size and scope under the PUC regulations. What I think is relevant to the town, because I just want to show we're trying very hard to accommodate the town, accommodate area residents, but also accommodate the telecommunications signal, because if we make it too short, then it doesn't get over the topography and the terrain to satisfy the coverage objective. So, and this was an issue that came up at the last the last public hearing that we had. Given that, because we were using an existing access road, we had actually considered that permanent disturbance. But when we looked more into the regulations and using some construction techniques, we're really just utilizing an existing road. And so that's a great advantage of the town. We're not doing a lot of permanent disturbance to build an access driveway. And if you can imagine, your zoning bylaw requires us to be 150% tower height setback. I don't, and you guys don't want us to be down in the Route 100 corridor because that would be way too visible from the 100 corridor. So we got to be up away from the road, and that requires us to go up substantially, up slopes and things, but we were able to find a lot that has an existing logging road. So it minimizes the amount of permanent disturbance that we do. We were able to redesign the compound to make them more pervious so that really the total amount of new impervious surface is only about 1,500 square feet. It's just a small equipment compound. And the total permanent earth disturbance is under 10,000 square feet. Once we, and as Mary showed, there's a lot of criteria that we need to satisfy to get the certificate of public good from the Public Utilities Commission. And once you reduce the scope of it to this limited scale and scope, really, we just have to make sure that you're not in a flood hazard area, which we're nowhere near, as you can imagine, being up on that high on the hill. And that we don't have, what Mary highlighted was the undue adverse impact on the scenic or natural resources and natural areas. And we're very conscious of that. We understand that Route 100 is a scenic corridor. We also understand that there's other cell towers already built along the Route 100 corridor, but being respectful of that and being conscious of that, we believe we've designed a facility that will not have an undue adverse impact on the scenic beauty of the Route 100 corridor. Like I said, the compound itself is really de minimis. It's a 60 by 60 fenced-in compound, which will have a small foundation for the tower itself and small equipment pads for initially Verizon and then other telecommunications companies that'll co-locate it on the future. So and given that it's 350 feet from the nearest property line and thousands of feet from the nearest public right-of-way, no one's going to see the compound itself or the electronic equipment. Once it's constructed, it's completely unmanned. There's no noise, smoke, odors. There'll be a small generator up there that is a third source of power. We'll bring primary power up there. We will bring backup batteries in case of a short-term power failure. And if in case of a long-term power failure, there'll be a generator, but it's not something that's powered primarily by generator. So the generator runs only in the event of a very long-term power failure. The tower itself is what we call a lattice tower. It's basically a giant erector set on which Verizon will attach antennas, and then over time, multiple other telecommunication companies will attach antennas. It's similar to other towers in the area. We find that this erector set, it's when you look at it from a distance, you actually can see through it. So it actually provides a more unobtrusive visibility from various vantage points. And this picture is significant because the picture that I showed at the last meeting showed a 170-foot tower, but again, due to attempts to address townsfolk's concerns, we've reduced the height to 140 feet. And everyone thinks that 140 feet, you're going to see that all over town because that's the tallest thing in town. But as you can imagine, when you're set back from abutting property lines by hundreds and from Route 100 by thousands of feet, and when you have a tree in your foreground, you don't see no one's going to see 140 feet of tower. I can't make it invisible, but I think you're going to find that it's going to be of minimal visibility, distant visibility, and very short amounts of the tower and not the full 140 feet. With respect to public safety, these are very low-powered transmissions. These are, it's not designed to cover all of Vermont or even all the 100 corridor from Killington to Sugar Bush. It's really designed to cover a couple square miles, and don't quote me on that because it's a very amorphous coverage objective. But, and as you can imagine, given the Route 100 corridor, it's really a linear coverage objective as opposed to a 360-degree coverage objective. But these are designed to be well below applicable FCC limits. And the reason is it's a two-way communication. Everyone has a cell phone. This is a low-powered communication to the nearest cell phone tower, which the nearest cell phone tower is on the other side of the hill in Bethel. Doesn't work. But so for that cell phone antenna to reach this, it's an equally low-powered. And they broadcast out at about 100 watts, which is de minimis as compared to other forms of radio communications that we already enjoy. There are FM stations and AM stations in Burlington that broadcast out at 50,000 watts because they're trying to cover as large an area as possible. Whereas this type of technology is only designed to cover a stretch of Rochester going south towards Stockbridge and north towards Hancock. And I'll also point out that from a radio frequency perspective, the town already has AT&T antennas on a 30-foot church steeple about 3 blocks from here. So the downtown area gets some coverage, but it's also, people have been living with that RF exposure harmlessly. And, your zoning bylaw, Vermont law, state law says if there was any tall structures that we could utilize, we would. And those tall structures tend to be in more habited areas. I actually go to a church that has 150-foot steeple. And there's 2 sets, it's the tallest thing in the area by far. And there are 2 sets of antennas in it. And I live in a much more dense village area similar to Rochester. And we enjoy good coverage because of that church steeple. But because there's not a lot of other tall structures in Rochester, we're forced to look at a new tower. But we've set it back so substantially that it's going to be significantly below all applicable FCC limits with respect to radio frequency exposure. And what we're anticipating is that we're going to get pretty decent coverage along the 100 corridor from the Stockbridge line going up all the way to the Hancock line. It's going to provide much And what these different colors represent is the different levels of coverage. As you can imagine, when you stand outdoors and use your cell phone, there's no structural impediment as compared to in your car or in your residence or in a building like this where there's a lot of structural impediment to the signal. And what this tells me is that in the downtown Rochester area, we'll get very good in-building coverage, throughout the entire, what I would call, populated area of Rochester from here north, going past the bike shop and the village of Rochester. And then, you're going to get decent coverage along the Route 100 corridor, all going up into Hancock, connecting up with sites that are being proposed in Granville. And again, this is all the different frequency bands that we talked about easier. But everyone wants to know, what's it going to look like? A year ago, we actually put a balloon up in the air as required by the Public Utilities Commission application process to put a balloon up in the air to 176 feet, which was the height of the formerly proposed tower, and we took pictures. And I can show them to you tonight. I showed them at the last meeting, but I'm going to tell you, as was requested by the Planning Commission at the last meeting, we've agreed to put up another balloon. And this balloon will be up at 140 feet. And I'll let everybody know as best I can when it's going to be. We'll talk about it tonight. And I think that's going to be very telling, because people are going to be able to stand in their own residences or on their own properties, and everyone think, oh my God, I'm going to see a 140-foot thing from all over Rochester. But I think you're going to find that you're not going to see it because of the way the topography is, by the way the tree canopy is. Unfortunately, I'm struggling with dates, so that's what we'll talk about as part of this process. And the reason I was struggling with dates is because we have an election in 2 weeks, and then Veterans Day, and so I don't want to talk about a date yet, but we'll talk about it before the night is out. But the one thing I want to jump to is the photos that we took of the 176-foot balloon. We engage engineers to take these photos, and they do very accurate depictions. And what this represents is a map of the town of Rochester, the star being where the proposed facility will be. And the red are places where they took photographs from, including the closest places, along Route 100 at the base of the subject property. And then up here in the village, and then farther south along Route 100 looking towards the facility. And the red spots means places where they took photographs, so we can scroll through that there was no visibility. And as you can imagine, going west towards Pittsfield, there's really, given the way the roads flow, given the topography, you're not going to see it from the western looking east. But there were some pockets of visibility from the village, photos 8, 9, and 10, and then farther south looking north on Route 100, where the big farm is along the 100 corridor, where there's no trees to mitigate the view. And so I'm just going to jump to those photos, because what I actually have are simulations as to what it's going to look like. So we took all these photographs here, but I'm just going to jump to 8, 9, and 10, which were the 3 photos from Rochester Village. And this is a picture shown from, I guess, the library parking lot, or across the street from the library, by the residential building across the street. And you could just see the balloon over the trees, over the buildings there. And what this represents is a photo simulation of what the tower is going to look like from, I'm thinking that's either the library parking lot or the library driveway right next to it. And as you can see, it's just above the trees, just above the tree canopy. What this photograph tells me too is that by reducing it down to the 140 feet height, you're not going to see it at all. And we will have, for the PUC and for the town's view as well, a photo after the 140-foot balloon float to substantiate that. From where are we at here? Riverbrook Road, again, farther south looking, farther north looking south. You know, again, you could see the balloon over the tree canopy, and then, oops, and then, where's this?
Here.
What's that?
It's here.
Oh, right here, yeah, exactly, right here. And then, you know, you can just see the balloon over the thing. And what this tells me, like I said, I don't want to rely on these photos, because when we submit new photos for the 140-foot balloon, you'll see that you're not going to see it from here as well. And then the other places, let me just jump to my map there, where there was some visibility, you know, about what looks like to be about a mile south, looking north. So photos 12 and 13, so I'm just going to jump to those. And you know, at this point, you're about, I think you're about a mile south of the property looking north, and you could just see the balloon over the tops of the trees, and that's what it looks like when we build the tower and add the antennas to it. And again, this is another vantage point that I believe that it will be much less visible with the 140-foot tower, because what I can see there is about 20 to 30 feet of tower. So if we eliminate 20 feet of tower height, it's going to be virtually invisible on the horizon. And then a little bit farther back, you know, it's there, and they actually enlarge it, which no one ever sees. But that tells me that you're seeing about 30 feet of tower. So, and again, at this vantage point, if we lower it down from 175 to 140, it's going to be virtually invisible. So I think we've done a pretty good job of addressing the town's concerns with respect to visibility along the 100 corridor. I just want to jump back to my other presentation. The one thing that Mary didn't talk about as part of her presentation, she talked very articulately about the state law PUC process. The federal government is also very much involved in wireless infrastructure siting. About 25 years ago, this was actually almost 30 years ago, the federal government adopted very comprehensive guidelines and laws, and it really stemmed from the fact that, you know, we had one telephone company back. I don't want to sound like my dad, but back when I was a kid, we only had one telephone company, AT&T, and they broke up AT&T into multiple components, and they gave out multiple wireless licenses for the purpose of promoting competition within the telecommunications industry. And at the same time, the federal government adopted laws to encourage the development of infrastructure. They recognized the great public benefit. They recognized the safety inherent in all of this, and the benefit to all of America, but certainly Rochester and the rest of Vermont. And it just basically says two things: that towns can't have the effect of prohibiting telecommunications. You can't say, no, we don't want it anywhere in Rochester. We don't want this technology. You know, you can be very thoughtful, as Mary explained. You know, you can make sure it's consistent with your plan. You can make sure it's consistent with your land use regulations. And again, the town doesn't actually issue the permit. It just makes recommendations to the Public Utilities Commission, who has overriding authority to determine whether or not it's in the public good. And you also can't say you can't discriminate a bunch of providers. And that's actually relevant here. It's never relevant in my world, but it's actually relevant here in Rochester, because at the last meeting, everyone said, my AT&T phone works fine. I don't need Verizon. But that's not what the government's trying to do. The government's trying to say we want competition. We also work with T-Mobile, another carrier that's probably not that popular in Rochester, Vermont, but they just put antennas on the Stockbridge Tower. They're coming on our tower as well, and they're building up the 100 corridor as well. And that provides another outlet for consumers, you know, so that you have competition within the telecommunications market. And there's been an immense amount of discussion about courts and everything, you can't say, we don't understand the health effects of these type of facilities, therefore we don't want it, because the government has deemed this technology safe. You just can't say no. You can say, I'm sorry, you don't have to say yes, but you can't say no without sufficient reason. Like, for example, I'll tell you the best place to put a tower would probably be right around here, right where all the users are. I bet half the kids in the elementary school have cell phones, let alone the people that used to come to the high school. All of you, the population of Rochester is pretty, not compact, but there's a density here in the village. But that wouldn't be the most appropriate place to put a tower from a land use or a visibility perspective. So, they don't say you have to say yes, but they say you can't say no without sufficient reason. So, as Mary explained, this process is we file a notice with the town. The town asked me to come. I spoke in September. I'm here again. Happy to come further if there's more questions. But ultimately, we'll be filing an application with the Public Utilities Commission. And then that starts a clock with respect to the town. The town will have an opportunity to comment. The town will have an opportunity to express its opinions to the Public Utilities Commission. The public as well will be able to express their public opinion to Public Utilities Commission. We've gotten through the process very successfully in other jurisdictions. I think the Public Utilities Commission and the state of Vermont recognizes the need for the technology. They just want to make sure we've done our homework to make sure we found an appropriate location and something that does not have an undue adverse impact with the scenic resources and other environmental concerns. So with that, I'd be happy to answer questions. I think Mary wants me to sit down, or if the Planning Commission has any questions.
Dan's going to moderate a Q&A, so.
Okay, perfect.
You chill out here, and if there's a question, I'll hand you a mic.
I don't know, you might have to go back through your slides at some point if folks have specific questions. So I'll just kind of sit here and call on people. Can folks hear me okay?
You're going to need, actually, Dan, can you use a mic just because it's running through Orca? So
Maybe
Dan
we
a mic
can,
and have one
can
mic.
we share a mic?
Yep,
There you go.
absolutely.
All right. Okay, can you hear me right now? All right, great. This is great turnout. We're going to have a lot of questions, I'm sure. So the way we're going to work this is going to ask you to just do one of your questions at a time, and we'll keep going around the room till everyone has exhausted their questions, if we have enough time to do that. And if we've exhausted the questions, then we'll get into hearing about your thoughts on the project.
And we
provide
have a ton of
comments.
people on Zoom.
Yes,
so,
right.
yeah.
So maybe what we'll do is
If
we'll take a question from the room, and then we'll check and see if there's a hand up in Zoom, and then we'll call on them. And we'll just give, hopefully, everyone an opportunity to ask their questions. Sound all right? All right. All right, we'll start right here.
Hello, everyone. Excuse me. Justin Stober, living out West Rochester. And thank you very much, sir, for coming, and we appreciate your presentation. Is it possible that you could go through your slide deck to show the coverage area of the reduced height 140-foot tower?
I don't have that yet, but
So there was one, though, that depicted...
I'm going to tell you what we had presented at the last meeting was at the height of the taller tower.
So this is the 170, whatever.
Yes. And I'm going to tell you, we will produce that for the benefit of the town and the PUC. I don't think it's going to change that dramatically. By reducing the height, what you're actually doing, one of the things you got to look at this is we call them vertical totem poles. Verizon will put its antennas at the top of the tower, and then we'll have space and structural integrity for other telecommunications companies, T-Mobile, AT&T, and there's always talk about others coming in the market, so we don't want to be short-sighted and design towers that are too short. By reducing the height of the tower, you're reducing the height of the bottom antennas as well as the top antennas. So we don't anticipate that there's going to be much change with Verizon, but I can certainly provide that to you. But
Well, just the concern, this is related, and I don't mean to have repetitive questions, but the concerns would be for the residents of West Rochester which, if we can get any map, would be on the very left edge of this photograph. So any reduction in height would potentially eliminate coverage for several hundred town residents that live west of town, which I realize is probably not the Verizon or any other telecommunications provider's main focus. It's obviously the Route 100 corridor, but there's tremendous potential to provide communication to several hundred town residents that live out the 73 corridor. Thank you.
Where were you last month? No, I'm being facetious.
Francis, you'll have updated coverage maps.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
When you submit your application.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Lori, did you have?
I didn't raise my hand.
Oh, I thought you had it up the first time. Okay. Oh, Jerry, I'm sorry.
Testing.
Jerry LeBlanc, Rochester. How wide will the construction road be? And second question is, has your company ever used helicopters to drop towers in to reduce the impact on the landscape?
The first question, how wide is the access driveway? The existing logging road is about 10 feet wide, and I'm going to stop, and on the line with us is Scott Adams, who's a civil engineer. If I say anything out of line, make sure he can interrupt me. And we might have to expand it a little bit in places to facilitate, bring up utility access. But one of the reasons why this particular site is immensely attractive to us and the town of Rochester is we're about 2,000, 2,500 feet meandering off of Route 100. The vast majority of that already has an existing logging road. So we don't need to utilize helicopters because really all we're doing is taking the existing logging road and extending it about 500 feet to kind of the top of the hill to get to a plateau where we can construct. So from a disturbance perspective, it's de minimis. We have utilized helicopters, but those tend to be on sites at the very top of mountains, which are far more visible from I think there's one as you come up 91, just past the Chester exit. There's one that you see quite prominently on the 91 corridor, and that's clear at the top of the mountain, and far more visible, but it was designed for a different perspective to cover more along Route 100, Route 91. So we're trying to avoid going on the tops of peaks to mitigate the visual impact.
Scott Adams does want to add something.
Go ahead.
Oh, actually, no, I just wanted to make sure I was unmuted so I could answer any questions should someone ask me one.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
Thanks. Thank you, Scott.
So the road won't be widened?
Yeah, no, in a couple spots, it might be on a temporary basis to facilitate the construction of the utility run, but we're also going to deploy, originally we had talked about putting more permanent disturbance down, meaning gravel and crushed stone, but now we can utilize, they're called construction mats. Really, the access driveway is only for construction. We have to bring a tower up there. We have to bring a crane up there. We have to bring some concrete up there. It's a construction road. After this, it's unmanned. We don't plow it in the winter. If someone needs to get up there, they can, in the wintertime, they bring a snowmobile vehicle. In the summertime, after we eliminate the construction mats, if they can bring all-terrain vehicles. So it's designed to be not passable, and it will, but like I said, the majority of it is an existing logging drive, so with de minimis amounts of improvement to just facilitate construction.
Any hands in the Zoom?
No.
Something went wrong. Please try again.
Thanks, Francis. So you said in this meeting, which is different than the last meeting, that you're just extending the logging road, but there are concrete trucks, crane, heavy equipment has to get up there. So wouldn't a logging road have to be quite a bit changed to get that equipment 1,000 vertical feet up the mountain?
I'm going to do two things. I'm going to jump to the plans that show kind of an overview of the road, and I'm going to ask Scott to answer that question.
Let me know when you're ready, friend.
Scott, I have C1 shown on the screen.
Okay, yep, so that shows pretty much the extent of the existing on top of an ortho photo. C2 may be a little more valuable, may show more detail. The photo is, with the photo in the background, it's kind of hard for the public to probably see it. But that shows C2. So that shows the extent of the existing topography and the existing logging trails. There's a pretty substantial logging trail that extends to approximately within about 400 feet of the proposed compound. So that last 400 feet would require a little bit more improvement, and that's what the plans indicate, that section of it will receive 6 to 8 inches of crushed stone, not gravel. So it's going to remain a permeable surface and infiltrate, as well as the compound will be a crushed stone surface as well, which will allow for infiltration through the voids of the stone and into the ground where it's intercepted. But the vast majority of the trail is existing. I believe it's over 75% is existing. So there will be a lot of limbing and things like that that will occur. The extent of tree removal is primarily to get the overhead utilities up to the site. It's really just clearing the tree, not trying to and there are notes on the plans to say this, to not clear the stumpings. That's not our intention, is to clear the stumps for the overhead operations. It's just to clear the trees out of the way so that the overhead wires can be installed to service the site. The path is quite substantial. I know I sent photos to the team. I don't believe I can share my screen here now, but it's a pretty substantial path, majority of the way up until the last, few hundred feet. Part of it is timing, right? And that's why the, timing of the year when the work takes place, the extent of the amount of mats that'll be required will vastly depend upon the amount of precipitation that has been received in the months prior to it getting constructed. So that's a little bit of a gray area that the contractor is going to have to work with. But for instance, going through the farmer's field, we really didn't want to disturb his field and then have to put it back. And then once you try to drive on it, the loam for the next year is going to be soft and punky, and you'll potentially make a mess of his grass. So with the extent there, going through the field, we're going to put down the mats. The construction vehicles will drive over those mats to service the site. And then once the site is built, and we're going to kind of think ahead, and we're going to install more of the carrier equipment that normally they would install up front on the tower so that they don't need cranes. Self-support towers are readily climbable, and they'll be able to use rigging and ropes to be able to install their remote radio heads and their antennas. As part of the initial tower installation, we're going to propose to install their frames for them. So they'll already be installed on the tower themselves and make it easier for them and less disruptive during construction of their operations. That could come a year or 2 years later. So like I said, there'll be a lot of limbing and things like that to get it through, but the path is quite substantial now. It's 10 feet, and in some areas it's 15 feet wide as it extends there now. And as the plans indicate, it's basically an exempt agricultural logging roads, that they could make minor improvements to. It's an existing logging road now, an agricultural road, and it's going to be that in the future. So those uses are allowed, and it's going to be continued to use for that purpose.
Dan, I have a question here.
Question on? Good.
Regina Cahill has a question.
Yes. Hi. I own a house on Route 100. I've owned it for the past 16 years. It's at 791 Route 100 South. So it's in the vicinity of this project. And I'm obviously in Connecticut where I live. It's just a vacation house there. So I'm not able to attend in person, and I'm on Zoom. I have been unable to see the screen as the gentleman has been talking. The camera has been on his face and not on the screen. So I have missed being able to see anything that he has shown, which I really would have liked to have seen the screen. And even now the camera is a little further back, but the screen is so bright white that as a viewer, we can't see what's on the screen. So that's just a comment. And I don't know if I could see the presentation, since you're recording it, if you'd be able to provide me with like a way to see the recording at a later date.
Regina, I can actually answer that. There we go. Yes, we will be able to provide you with copies. Hold it away. I did so much better with that one. Okay. Yes, we are not able to show you the screen. We're not able to show you the screen on Zoom. We were not able to get that set up for tonight. There is a recording, and we will be able to make that available to you through Orca. And the documents that are presented tonight will be available once Vertex submits their application to the Public Utilities Commission. All the documents will be public. So I will encourage you to drop an email to us at rochestervtplanningcommission@gmail.com. And I can add you and anybody else to the email list to make sure you get all the information.
Okay, I didn't get that email address. I'd like to write that down.
It's Rochester VT Planning Commission @gmail.com.
Okay, I would be very interested in seeing, it sounded like he was showing photographs, because just from what I've seen tonight, I still don't know exactly where this is planned for, because I've been unable to see any of the photos as well.
Mary, if I could jump in.
You may.
I can email this presentation and the photos and the plans, recognizing that it's all preliminary based on what we talked about tonight. I can email them to you tomorrow, and then you can put them on the website. I recognize limitations, but I think she's asking very legitimate questions.
Great.
Thanks, Regina.
Thank you.
Albina?
Albina Harvey, Rochester. Just a couple questions. In the original plan submitted here, it shows that the pad area, the enclosed area is 50 by 50, yet tonight in the presentation it was 60 by 60. I'm wondering why the change when the tower is smaller. And I'm also wondering how the construction plans on dealing with the ledge in the log road.
No. I believe that, and Scott, interrupt me if I'm wrong, the compound itself is 50 by 50. We fence in 50 by 50, but we sign a lease with the landlord for 60 by 60 in order to have areas outside the compound for utility infrastructure or parking space and things like that. So the total limit of clearing was on that other sheet, but it's about 3,000 square feet. 3,000 square feet on a 244-acre parcel.
I understand. I'm intimately familiar with
Thank
the
you.
parcel. The question regards the ledge on the access road. How's that going to be dealt with?
We're not aware of any ledge now, but we haven't done any geotechnical analysis. What happens is after the PUC approves a process, we do some preliminary clearing. We bring a geotech rig up to the top to determine what's exactly at the base where the tower will be and along the access road, and design a foundation very specific for that. We're not anticipating ledge, but we're in Rochester, Vermont, so we have no idea. And we've dealt with ledge previously in many similar situations, and they can design a foundation very appropriate for the ledge.
Okay, I'm not worried about the foundation for the tower. My concern is on the log road. How do you normally deal with ledge in the roads?
Scott, you want to try to answer that? How do you deal with ledge on the logging trail?
So as the way the trail is now, we've literally driven up there with our ATVs and our company survey vehicle. So we can drive up the trail in its current state with a four-wheel drive vehicle as it stands. It's not suitable for a passenger vehicle, but it's suitable for construction vehicles that would be necessary for construction of the site. They can access it the way it is right now. There's no large outcrops of ledge within the logging road that would be an impediment for the construction of this site.
And you plan on taking concrete trucks up this logging trail?
There's a lot of unique things. I mean, sometimes they do small batches, meaning they won't fill the concrete truck full. They'll do it in 5 yards. They've had them in the past where they would literally give it a tug with a bulldozer. Like the contractors are very familiar with construction of rural sites such as this. I've been involved with sites in the top of Mount Washington, Sunday River, Bolton Valley Ski Resort. We've done some very difficult construction sites. It gets done in a matter of a couple of months, and then it's built, and the natural topography will revegetate and go back to with the way Mother Nature intended, once it's constructed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, these sites are unmanned. There's no water, sewer, there's no manned facilities. They're all remotely monitored for security and electronic purposes. The antennas are actually getting smarter so that if they ever had to tweak them, they have the ability to tweak them remotely so that because of situations like this, we've, as Scott mentioned, built many equally, if not way more challenging terrain type situations. A gentleman mentioned helicopters. We've deployed them before. We don't need to here, but we've utilized that. And there are a lot of sites built in Vermont and New Hampshire that are only helicopter accessible. And no one goes there because they work and and if they have to, they bring all-terrain type vehicles to get there.
Anybody on Zoom? have a
Not at the
question?
moment. Oh, what, yes? Yes, I do. Well, Evelyn Prixner. You have to, Evelyn, you need to unmute. Evelyn, you're muted. You're still muted.
For me, the system wasn't allowing me to unmute. It had to come from the host.
Yeah, well, I'm asked, okay, asked to unmute. All right, I did, I asked to unmute. Whoa.
Okay, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So obviously the logging roll that we're talking about is our snowmobile trail.
For a portion of it.
Yeah, and so how far away is the site from the snowmobile trail?
It's quite far. It's from the vast snowmobile trail that's on the vast maps.
Right.
Yes, it's probably 3,000 additional feet away from there.
Really?
Yeah, it's quite far.
What is the altitude of the site that you've chosen?
The site is the altitude is 1,585 feet.
1,585. Okay, all right. Okay, I see it. Okay, I was just wondering where it was on the map.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you very much.
Question from the back there?
Hello, Bruce Vanek, North Hollow Road. I apologize if this was answered previously. Why is it that these antennas are not going on one of the two existing towers just south or north of Rochester? And also there's antennas in the church steeple here. Those all seem like great existing infrastructure to put more antennas on. Thank you.
The first question, Verizon has just recently put antennas on the new tower in Stockbridge. And that's really designed to cover the area from the Pittsfield Stockbridge line to the Stockbridge Rochester line. And as you can imagine, the terrain here is so dramatic that if you go a quarter mile up the road, you're curving around a bend. That tower in Stockbridge is, there's something like the Wild Fern Cafe or something like that. It's behind there, closer to Pittsfield than to Rochester. But Verizon's going on that. In addition, there's a tower that was just built Butts Hill Road in Granville that Verizon is also on. And there's another tower being proposed on North Hollow Road in the north end of Granville going up towards Warren that Verizon will be going on as well. These aren't designed to cover huge swaths of area. And in addition, the topography limits the ability, as well as FCC regulations with respect to the power output. So you can't just turn up the antennas at one space to get more coverage. You're limited by the power output. With respect to the church steeple, AT&T already has antennas in there. Verizon looked at it too, but as you can imagine, church steeples 100 years ago weren't designed with telecommunications antennas in mind. They generate a little bit of heat, as all electrical apparatus do. With a church steeple, it's an unventilated area where you put it on an antenna, a tower 140 feet in the air. You don't require ventilation because there's plenty of natural ventilation. So there's just no room in the church steeple for more antennas. In addition, there's not even enough room for AT&T because what's happened over time is we call them, the antennas have gotten smarter. There's more electronics baked into the antennas and less electronics at the base of the tower, or I'm not sure where they are at the church steeple, maybe the basement of the church. And so those antennas just require more space, and a confined area like a church steeple wasn't designed 100 years ago, and it's not getting better because of the antennas. So that's why we need a tower to, and then one of the benefits of a tower is that it's adaptable. You hear about 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G, all the different generations of technologies. That the type of tower and the structure is adaptable to future technologies, so that in the event something happens in the future, it's a lot easier retrofitted. A church steeple didn't have room the first time, no longer has room now. So.
Anybody on Zoom?
No.
Okay, Mason.
One of the questions I have more for the community is thinking about, is this technology actually outdated now? Should we be holding off? We do have plenty of cell service around because of Starlink, other technologies, and before we'll create another piece of equipment that may be outdated before you even know it. So it's something that we should be looking at. Maybe this is too quick to move on this.
Kevin Geiger has something to say about that. Hang on.
Hi, Sandy. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah, my comment wasn't regarding whether this technology is outdated or not. I had other comments. So I don't know if now's the time you want any of that. But.
Well, go. You have the floor.
Okay. And my understanding was this meeting wasn't to talk about merits of the projects or demerits of the projects. So I won't get into that. I will just say issues that I have heard and that we will raise in the future, which is this project will involve significant tree cutting in our opinion to put up poles and lines. And that's going to be an issue. Gravel roads are impervious surfaces for Vermont stormwater purposes. So despite the gravel, they don't really behave that differently. And we will have some other concerns as well about getting equipment up there, but I wanted to raise those.
So my understanding from speaking with the owner that's going to be building the site is that the poles will be private. He's intending for the private poles. Yes, they'll need electric service on it, but they're intended to be privately maintained poles. There will be no gravel used on this site, to be clear. Any access road or the compound itself is going to be pervious crushed stone. It's kind of a more innovative, low impact proposal that will allow infiltration and allow storage of any runoff from the cabinets within the crushed stone, the voids of the crushed stone, to allow it to, it's basically is about a 40% void ratio. And that water will be able to infiltrate into the soil as it did prior. There should actually be less runoff from this system than pre-existing conditions. So there will not be any gravel utilized, even on the access road. It'll be physically crushed stone.
I want to remind folks, if you please let us know your name when you have a question. And that was Kevin Geiger, you heard from the Regional Planning Commission just prior, talking about those issues. Go ahead, Ben.
Thanks. Yeah, my question's actually related to that. Because the regional plan designates this as a highest priority forest connectivity block, this area. It's also a deer wintering yard. My first question is, what have you researched on that front, and why is this acceptable in those two specifically called out designations?
Two things. One, in addition to local and state regulations, these facilities are also heavily federally regulated as well. The federal government requires us to go through a very extensive environmental analysis. It's under the National Environmental Policy Act, NEPA, we call it in our world. And it requires us to make sure that we have no impact on plant and wildlife species. So as part of this process, we do that. We contact the state and state databases and things like that. We don't have
the
any...
mapping already shows these have special resources on that front. So.
I understand that, but we're just required to make sure we don't have an undue adverse impact. We're building a 60 by 60 clearing, 3,000 square foot clearing in the middle of a 244 acre parcel. So I suspect that habitat is a vast majority. So we don't have a significant or an undue adverse impact on that. They're really quite de minimis when you look at the volume of activity in the entire area. So, but again, we need to satisfy.
You're saying you don't have an adverse impact. That study's been done. How do you know that? I guess you're saying that's already a conclusion.
We just need to make sure that we satisfy. What we look for is endangered species and endangered plant species and wildlife species, and we need to make sure we don't have an adverse impact on that, and we don't. So the fact that there's deer in the area, there's deer all over Rochester. So, and we're not precluding.
So on the endangered species piece, which is one piece, what studies have been done to allow you to say that you know you don't have an adverse impact on endangered species since you brought them up?
We don't have to do specific studies because we look at it and the volume of land that we're disturbing to the size of the parcel, to the area within the habitat. And again, all we're required to look at is whether or not there's any endangered species and endangered plant and wildlife species.
Anyone on Zoom?
On that front, I have another question. You said the best place to put a tower would be close to where the users are. I totally agree with you, rather than up on a mountain surrounded by deer and bear and other animals that aren't checking Facebook, surrounded by wilderness, basically. What other areas did you guys look carefully at putting a transmitter? What other sites?
I don't have specific locations, but what we look at is topography and terrain. We look at a whole host of things. Somebody commented that we're taking down trees. Well, I could put it in the ball field behind the elementary school, but I don't think that would be popular. And I'm being facetious because we've been doing this for a long time. We look at things very globally in the sense that we want to be close to downtown Rochester, but my suspicion is that if we put it any closer to downtown Rochester, we'd have more public opposition. We want to be close to the users, but at the same time, not have an undue adverse impact on the residential uses in the area, on the scenic highway. And so we looked at a lot of different areas, and I will provide that information to the commission. But at the same time, I think we found a site that satisfies the PUC's requirements, satisfies the town zoning requirements, and no one said during this process, and you're welcome to, why don't you go here? Because we'll look at that. But I think we have found a site that complies with your zoning bylaw for good effect and complies with PUC regulations, and satisfies the telecommunications and coverage objective, which is really the driver.
It conflicts with the town plan and like 20 different bullet points. And the town plan calls out the North Hollow, the scenic Route 100 corridor, Bethel Mountain, the village, and other view sheds, which this will be highly visible from. Like the balloon test was all from the valley floor. None of it was from the North Hollow. The North Hollow, in most of the North Hollow, you'll see at a similar level, like you made that good point. When you're looking up, you won't see the whole tower above the canopy. But in the North Hollow, you will see most of the tower that's above the canopy. But none of your visual simulations that you call them were from anywhere else but the valley floor.
And I'm going to agree with you on that. We didn't consider that, which is why when the Planning Commission asked us to do another visibility demonstration, we agreed to do that. So we'll advertise it. I'm sure before the night's out, we'll agree on a date, and the Planning Commission will get the word out, and we'll put an advertisement in the newspaper if necessary, and people will be able to assess it from their own particular vantage points.
Mm-hmm. That'll be a balloon test?
Yes.
What's the balloon? 4-foot balloon? Is that right? How big is it?
Exactly.
Yeah. You were saying the balloon is representative of the tower, but the tower is about 800 square feet, and the balloon, a 4-foot circle, is about 12 and a half square feet. So you would need like 66 balloons to be the same size as a tower.
No, what we can do, what the balloon indicates is whether or not you can see it from a particular location. And then if there's visibility, like we showed at the previous visibility demonstration, we can engage engineers to scale it off and do a photo simulation of what it will look like from that vantage point.
Okay, you had said this is what the tower is going to look like, the balloon.
No.
Scott. So the balloon is... Sorry. So yeah, just to reiterate on the balloon test. So the balloon, yes, it absolutely is 4 feet in diameter. The standard sector frame that the carriers mount their equipment on is about 12 feet in width. So basically the balloon is about a third the width of the tower. So between that, and then we also use markers on the string or the cable at 10-foot increments, so we can actually see the direction, confirm the direction. We usually have 2 people on site, 1 person at the balloon at all times, 1 person driving around taking photos to try to make sure that the balloon is as straight as possible, as accurate as possible when we take those photos. And then we utilize 3D drafting software, as well as Photoshop, to basically superimpose in a realistic view of the tower. And when you compare the size of the balloon with the safe face of the tower, I'm confident you'll see that the scale is representational of what you would expect it to be.
Okay, I'm going to let someone else have an opportunity.
Dan, Kevin Geiger has his hand up again.
All right, we'll go to Kevin and then Alvina and then right back there.
Sorry, I think that just has stayed up somehow.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Alvina?
RPZ Rochester. I understand the logic of lowering the tower, but it was also a little disturbing that you're going to lower it and thereby restrict the signal that is going to be available to West Rochester and north and south of town. And in this day and age, it would seem that tower should be left at its original height so that the areas west of town along 73 will also be able to serve it, as well as a greater area north and south of 100. I understand everyone's concerned about the tower being visible, but I think we need to be public on this. Thank you.
Yeah, and I have Sharon on Zoom.
Let's remember to keep this to our questions, then we'll come back around to your comments about what you think about the project. Go ahead and Zoom land.
Yes, I had a question for you, and that is, who is incentivizing you and your company to build the tower? Is it the state of Vermont? Is it the federal government? Like, where's the pot of money coming from for your company to come in and build the tower? And also, the second question is, you mentioned that you co-locate if you could, and somehow I'm guessing that that's not exactly the case, because then you would not be building a tower, you would not be having a job from this project. So I think Verizon should actually speak to that, not you specifically.
I explained at the beginning, Vertex is a wireless infrastructure developer. We are essentially real estate developers. We partner up with telecommunications companies. We use our own capital. We bring telecommunications to rural areas, because getting Verizon or anyone else to build their own tower. And what happened in the old days is that Verizon would build its towers, and then when people wanted to share, like Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile, they wouldn't play well together because they were competing in a telecommunications arena. So wireless infrastructure developers like Vertex came out to do all the due diligence. We've done an immense amount of work just to be standing here tonight. We still have a lot of work to do to get through the PUC process. And then we have to do the construction work, all of which costs money, but it enables companies like Verizon to focus on Rochester and Stockbridge and Granville and the rest of Vermont. We utilize our capital. The state also, by using the PUC process as opposed to local zoning, is encouraging the development of this to have a uniform process, which is Connecticut does the same thing, but Massachusetts and Vermont and Maine, we have to comply with 300 different zoning bylaws, all of which are disparate. So the state of Vermont is actually encouraging this because they recognize the public good in better telecommunications. So, but this is not government subsidized. This is privately subsidized by Vertex and Verizon.
Hi, Jonna Murray, Speedic here, and I just wanted to ask you, sir, to go on record, because some people are concerned about visibility, that could you tell everybody here, would you agree that it's not going to be an accurate representation? The balloon test will not be accurate because it's much smaller than the actual tower would be. So the visibility, I understand you're doing a test so that people can look, but it's not really going to accurately represent what it would look like. Is that correct?
No, but what I can then do, if there's a place that you can see the balloon, I can then take we do a photo simulation with engineers to scale it out. And that's what we had done previously. And the engineers have done it many, many times and certify us to the accuracy of it. So, if you'd rather, I'll build a tower and then that'll show what it'll look like. But
No,
I can't, yeah, I agree. I'm sorry for being facetious, but this is the best that we can do. And it's worked very successfully in many, many other cities and towns throughout New England.
I understand, but you were just showing us a lot of photos of a balloon, and it's not an accurate representation, correct?
No, the photo simulation is an accurate representation. Many times we go back and take photos of the actual tower after we build it to show that the simulation that we produced a year before is accurate.
No, but we're here now, and we're asking questions, and one of the concerns has to do with visibility and what it would look like, and a balloon test is not accurate to what it would look like as a fully built tower, correct?
I respectfully disagree with you, ma'am.
So Francis, can I ask you a question, just so that I'm understanding? You are going to do another balloon test at a
Yes.
date to be determined, preferably tonight. If the balloon is visible from a specific location, your engineers will take that location and turn it into a 2D representation of what a tower would look like there using modeling software.
That's correct.
And then you would provide us with those images.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thanks for that clarification.
Scott has something to add here. Hang on.
Just for kind of a point of clarification, so once we set the date, myself and one of my staff will visit the site. We will drive up to the top of the site where we have staked out the proposed tower location. We pre-measure in the field ahead of time the length of it's basically kite flying string that's capable of holding 250 pounds. We blow up via a helium balloon over 4 feet in diameter. Usually 4 feet's the minimum. It's usually even larger than that, and we measure the circumference, when we're on site. And then we raise that balloon so that the bottom of the balloon is equal to the height of the tower. And the reason we do that is so that I can attest that if I cannot see the balloon, that means the top of the balloon is 4 to 5 feet higher than the tower. So if I can't see the balloon, then you will not be able to see the tower. And if I can only see a sliver of the balloon, you still will not be able to see the tower. So the top of the tower was equal to the bottom of the balloon. And that is absolutely accurate. And we field measure it with electronic distance measuring devices while on site standing below the tower, in addition to literally using a tape measure at the site prior to driving up to the top.
Thanks for that, Jake.
Hey, Jake Wildwood from Rochester, your 2,000-foot neighbor to the tower. How long is the lease on the property, and what happens at the end of the lease? Do you take it down? Do you leave it up, etc.?
I don't usually get involved in that, so I can only speak generically, but generally they're about 50-year leases. And we've never had to take one down yet, but if, as part of the PUC process, if the town asks, we will agree to post a bond so that, and then I can get Scott to estimate the cost of removing it and bring it down, and we can post a bond for that amount. And it's a common ask, and I'm not supposed to offer it, but my suspicion is someone in the process will. And so we're not anticipating that this is going to become obsolete. However, it's a legitimate concern, and I'm not going to be here at the end of that 50 years, but there's a mechanism that we've used previously to make sure that if I disappear and Vertex disappears and Verizon disappears, that there's a mechanism to take it down.
I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Identify yourself.
Oh, sorry, Lori Church. One question back to the balloon test. If you said, I'm little girl on math. So if you say that the balloon is 4 feet in diameter and the top of the tower is 12 feet, why would you not put up 3 balloons so that we can know that we could see it? Because to several neighbors' points, we're concerned about the visibility of it.
Yeah.
Well, let me explain that. The balloon is just a visual representation, and we have limits. If I put a 12-foot balloon, then there's more surface area for the wind. One of the things that's going to happen is we're going to agree on a date, and I'm going to throw out November 12. But if you can tell me that it's going to be calm on November 12th, thank you, but I can't predict that. So what I'm going to do is advertise it and say, we're going to put it up on November 12th, but check a website the day before, and we'll make the determination way before that the winds are cooperative or not cooperative. And we've done this so many times that, and we've tried bigger balloons, and we've tried other technologies, and the more surface area, the less accurate it will be, because then the balloon will blow over. So but like I said, what Scott can do is if he sees the balloon, he can then do a scaled model to show what it will look like. So I don't think it's not representative, because I can produce a model that shows. If you can't see it 7 miles away, whether it's this big, you're not going to see it whether it's this big. It doesn't change that.
That logic doesn't work.
Well, I'm telling you, we've done this many, many times successfully. And the issue that we have is predicting the weather in advance. But we've come up with a mechanism to advertise that. Once we get the balloon up, and we have to pick a day where the wind speeds are 5 to 10 miles an hour and not more. Because if they're more than 10, then the balloon blows around, and then folks complain that it's not accurate because the string is like this as opposed to like this. So we try very hard to make it as representative as possible. And our choice is to build the tower and take pictures of it, but I don't think the town wants us to do that. So this is the limitation that we have with the technology that we have.
Okay, second question, just a simple yes or no. Would you say that your plan conforms to the town plan and regional plan?
Yes.
Do you want to rethink that one?
That's not a question, Lauren.
It actually was a question.
No, that was a great question. I actually thought your yes or no was a great question, but you want to rethink that? It's not a question.
I was allowing him a second chance to answer.
The answer is yes again.
It's literally not phrased as a question. So part of the reason, and I'll say this because I'm a process nerd here, right? We want to be able to provide you with information, and we want to know what information we need to provide to you. And then we want to provide you with multiple opportunities to make comments, to say them in good faith and receive them in good faith. And so as best we can, my request would be for you to think about the form of your question and whether or not it is inviting somebody to actually answer it or setting them up in a way that is just guaranteed to fail. And my request goes in both directions to both people who are presenting to us and when you're being presented to. So that's
Okay.
that was me breaking my own rules and making a comment so you know what I did. Sorry about that.
Understand. However, that good faith does go both ways because I lost count on the number of times I was writing down minimal visibility, virtually invisible, no one oversees, not going to see it at all, you won't see it. Is that real?
That's why we do a visibility determination, so that you can make your own assessment of that, ma'am.
Okay. My final question is, the standard is the certificate of public good. That's what you're seeking. Whose public good is this, or is this corporate good? Because if the town of Rochester has multiple landline providers, EC Fiber, AT&T, I live very west of town also. I have great coverage with AT&T. That may be. That could very well be. I'm saying I have it. But even the attorney said that it's mostly for visitors. So is this a certificate of public good, or is there a certificate for Verizon and T-Mobile to come in?
There are an immense amount of Verizon and T-Mobile customers who hopefully live in Rochester, who live throughout the state of Vermont, who come to Vermont to enjoy the scenic resources. There's an immense amount of public good. There's an immense amount of public safety benefit that comes from a tower like this. I go to a lot of public hearings like this, and I hear so many stories about people who had a house fire and couldn't get a telecommunications signal, so the house burned to the ground as opposed to fire engines coming on a timely manner. I was at a hearing a couple of months ago where a woman said, just so you know, I'm going to look at this tower every day. This is in my line of sight from my picture window. But the benefit is that I'm going to be able to live in my house because my husband died 10 years ago, and I can't live alone without my call button, my help, I'm fallen, I can't get up button. And I can't walk to my mailbox and get a Wi-Fi signal. So if I fall on my way to my mailbox, I'm lying there. But this telecommunications tower is going to allow me to stay in my home. And I could tell you 1,000 stories like that. And so there's an immense public good. And again, the fact that we're bringing a structure that allows competition, that's certainly in the public good. It's certainly in Verizon's, but Verizon's not doing this altruistically. They're doing it to bring telecommunications to places like Rochester, Vermont, which, as you can imagine, isn't as populated as Boston or Montpelier or Burlington, where, you know, you get more return on your investment. But they also have requirements from the federal government to develop better telecommunications networks, to bring better telecommunications to Rochester and Stockbridge and everywhere up and down the Route 100 corridor. So we're all working together for the public good. And, you know, I've had several people here tonight say, how come you're not building a tower taller to cover my house as opposed to your house? So, and we try the best we can to address everybody's concerns, but I can assure you not everybody in town is going to be happy. I never once said it was going to be invisible. I never once, and I can't say that. The last time I went to England, I went to Diagon Alley and I tried to buy an invisibility cloak, and they just don't sell them. Harry Potter joke. Harry Potter joke.
I do. Hang. Sharon has something.
Hi, this is Sharon again. I do have a question, and it's actually for the Vertex gentleman. I've actually been injured by this technology, and I know other people that have been too. And so I'd like to know how this is in my public good when I moved up to Rochester to get away from this type of stuff. And people in Pittsfield, Massachusetts are suffering from this stuff for Verizon not taking the towers down after they've caused them health issues for the last 3 to 4 years. I really don't want to have to leave my home again. And where you're talking about putting this tower might make that have to happen. So how is this in my public good as a person that has been injured by this technology?
Rochester already has telecommunications companies operating right in the downtown area and is the most densely populated area of Rochester. The same technology has been deployed thousands of times throughout several hundred times throughout Vermont, tens of thousands of places nationally. In more densely populated areas, sometimes the residential buildings are the tallest buildings in town. I did a project in Worcester, Massachusetts, where the tallest buildings in Worcester were all the Public Housing Authority buildings, and we put antennas on all of those. We've lived with this technology for 100 years because it's the same as radio. And you know, the fire and police chief use a form of radio telecommunication that's the same technology, just a different frequency band than what we deploy. So, and the bottom line is the federal government has deemed it safe. They've done a lot of testing. In order to get the public good to better deploy, we need more telecommunication sites. And the last thing I'll point out is I'm not proposing something in downtown Rochester. I'm proposing something 2,000 feet off of Route 100, about 3/4 or to a mile south of downtown, as far away as you can get from the population and from residential users, still providing great benefit and a significant public good without having any effect on any neighboring properties.
I guess this is a question for Mary, maybe? Hi. So you said there will be many opportunities to ask for public comments. Yep. And so when would that start? I mean, when would that happen?
So, okay, this is working. I believe, and I'll go back and check my notes, that this would be the third opportunity, and I'm going to be cautious here with my public meeting because a meeting versus a session versus a hearing are very different things. But this has been on the agenda at the Planning Commission twice, and both of those are public documents, publicly circulated, and the minutes are there. This will be the third time that the Planning Commission or the Planning and Zoning Board has created a public space for it. And I would like to reiterate that the application has not yet been submitted, okay? And so until the application is submitted, all of the formal processes don't kick in. And so once the application is submitted, we will continue, and please, planning board people, like, I'm speaking for the process tonight because that was something that I took on to organize. I am not speaking for the planning board in total. But so what I would say is, I believe this is the third public opportunity that the planning board has created for people to learn about, ask questions about telecommunications permitting, and I believe we will continue to offer more as we go through this 60 to 180-day process. And I would like to try and continue to bend over backwards to make them as accessible as possible, learn from what people have said, and make there be a single point you can go for the documents. So that's where I'm going.
Well, I have more question about this. Because there's like this, in this particular opportunity that we had, it was about asking questions. Maybe some of us have information that we want to give in an informational venue.
Yep,
you know?
and I believe that is the next step for us, is for something like that, right? Part of what we want to do is to be very targeted with what our goals and purposes are for each meeting so that people can best decide how to deal with the information. So I agree with you, and I think that's something that we're looking forward to with future opportunities, is to think about what other information people from the town want us to help them access. So does that answer your question?
I think so, I hope so, except for if some of us would like to propose other kinds of experts, perhaps? Is that a possibility?
Yes.
And how would we go about doing that?
So I would contact, A, we can talk about it after the meeting tonight, but B, I would send an email, and I did get your email, but I would send an email to the Rochester VT Planning Commission at gmail.com, and I would say that you would like, I'll think about how to word this, but who you think we should listen to, why you think we should listen to them, suggestions you might have for how we could connect people with that person, and we'll talk about it a little more, because I will emphasize, right, we are making this process up as we go along, and so I do take your suggestions very seriously for how to change the formats going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Scott has a comment on this.
Just speaking of the balloon test that we're going to schedule, that I will be on site for with my staff. Two other things came to mind. Number one, with respect to the tower itself, the physical tower, not the attachment mounts that are roughly 12 feet wide, but the tower is typically 5 feet in width. So again, that's very close to the typical diameter of the balloon in question. So the balloon is very representational of the tower face, and all of this stuff is to scale. We have detailed engineering drawings for these towers. So, we can quickly make sure that this is a very accurate representation, as close as humanly possible, given what we have. And again, the face width is 12 feet. But if there's key locations that people want us to consider, it's helpful for me to know ahead of time, for the planning commission there or the town there, to provide Fran and myself a list of other locations that we haven't taken photos from. And believe it or not, we actually took more locations than is shown on that map. While the balloon was up for hours, I literally did it myself. I drove the town trying to find it. And I went basically a mile in all directions, because once you get behind a mile, if you can see it from another mountaintop, it's like looking at the tower on top of Mount Washington. It's a dot. It's like a speck. It's almost impossible to really simulate because it's a speck. So usually I stick to within a mile radius when I'm trying to drive around the block. Here, the block is quite large. So the eastern side of the site, it's probably 3 miles away, to get to the next closest road that direction. And the closest residential house, just because it came up, is in the area of about 1,800 feet away from this tower. And that's unusual. That's actually a pretty big distance, from typical standards.
This is just a dumb question, but is this going to have a flashing light on top of the tower?
Not a dumb question, and the answer is no. And the short answer is no. I think I give way too many long answers, so.
Ben, you have another question?
Yeah, on, regarding the public good, because I have the regional plan, the Two Rivers Ottaquechee Regional Plan in front of me, and it's pretty clear. It says the use of the region's ridges for telecommunication towers and related facilities needs to be undertaken in a manner that will not unduly detract from nor adversely affect these scenic values. Protection of these areas from developments is a matter of public good. Did Vertex refer to the regional plan for this area?
We're not on the top of a ridge, and we're very conscious of that. If you look past, it goes thousands of feet higher and.
Oh, no, you're
farther.
definitely on a ridge top at that site. That's totally incorrect to say. I read maps for a living, and you're at a high point, or you wouldn't put it there. It's line of sight technology, so you have to put it on high points.
I understand that, but but we look at it from the Route 100. It's not in a position where it projects significantly farther above the ridge, and by reducing it down, we don't think you're going to see it above the tree line.
So I understand that, but this talks about ridge top development, and you're on a ridge. Did Vertex refer to the regional plan? That was my question.
Yes, we look at the regional plan, we look at the town's plan, we look at the town zoning bylaw, we look at the PUC regulations. The problem is that I can't appease everybody. And I've got multiple people here saying I should have built it taller. I've got people at the last time said I should have built it so that you can't make it visible. I have the RF engineers at home saying it's got to be a requisite height to provide the signal or it has no benefit to the town. So we try very hard, and we've looked at all these things, and I believe that that we are compliant. You know, you said that the standard is an undue adverse impact. It doesn't say invisible, and so we don't believe that we have an undue adverse impact in compliance with the regional policy plan, with the town zoning bylaw, and the town's plans, and the PUC regulations. And
Well, no, it actually says not detract from or adversely affect the scenic values. That's what the regional plan says.
We are quite confident that we do not detract or undo.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Okay, Jake Wildwood again. Vertex has a history of suing towns and public utility commissions when you don't get the answer you want. Is that sort of what we're expecting here?
We expect the Public Utilities Commission to issue a certificate of public good.
And if not, will you just go away? I'm not trying to be mean, I just want to know what's going to happen.
I don't want to project that far ahead. Like I said, we've designed a site compliant with all the regulations, and we expect a certificate of public good.
Thanks.
Before we hang up, I want to talk about the date of the balloon.
I want to ask a question, if I may. Can you hear me okay? So now, under the 248, it's a limited project where it was a full.
Limited size and scale, yes.
Limited size and scale. And in the reading, the primer there, I couldn't quite tell if the analysis that PUC does is the same. The limited size and scale didn't talk about the criteria, but it did say something about significant issues. Do you know if, or regional planning folks know, that the difference between those two processes?
It's the same criteria, but there's different presumptions. Like there's certain criteria that don't apply to these type of facilities, like air quality, for example. There's no air issues. However, before we had to put in affidavits to say there's no impact on air quality. Now, because it's limited size and scale, we don't. Things like that. Things that don't, there's no impact on traffic, for example. But before, I used to have to get a traffic study. Now we don't, because there's a presumption, because it's limited, that there's no impact on traffic. Things like that.
I'll do a wrap up and then everybody can talk stuff. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up for tonight. if you are physically here, and I know many of you were on Zoom, so this does not apply, but if you were physically here, just drop and you picked up a comment form, a bulletin, not a bulletin board, a clipboard, a pen, just drop it on the table or on the empty boxes under the table on your way out. And we will take those written comments and gather them all into a document to share amongst the Planning Commission and to turn into a fact sheet so that I can start collating the frequently asked questions, putting answers to them, and putting them up as a publicly available document for people who are coming into this process as it goes forward. I suppose if any individual person has a question, a comment, or a suggestion about the process that they'd like to make in person, I'll hang out for a few minutes tonight. But otherwise, thank you very much for coming. Thank you for my patience with my insistence on process. And Christine's going to say something.
So thank you all for coming. I just want to point out how much time and effort Mary put into making this event happen for you. It was voluntary, completely voluntary, because we as a commission really want to make sure you know the information and have an idea of what to do with it. So can we give Mary and Greg a round of applause for all that they did? That's all.
Mary, we wanted to talk about the date.
And just in terms of the process, at this point, we'll be answering questions through email, sharing information. If we get the website set up, we'll put Fran's presentation up there and all the other documents that they've provided with that you can also get from the PUC website. And then once there is a application, then we'll go through this again, and then you'll have real opportunities to stand up and speak your mind about what this means to you.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Can I just want to talk about the balloon, and the issue, I would have come in with a prepackaged date, but the problem is that we have an election in a couple.
Francis, what I would say is let's figure out the date and then we can tell everybody, but rather than keeping everybody here past 8.
That's fine.
Okay, thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks, folks.